I realized something was terribly wrong the moment my mother's smile changed. It wasn't warm or proud or grandmotherly. It was sharp, deliberate, calculated. She stood on the patio, handing out bright blue season passes to Adventure Harbor, like she was the queen of some perfect family she'd created. Every grandchild got one. Every child laughed, posed for pictures, ran off cheering, except my daughter. When Lila stepped forward, hopeful, glowing, clutching the drawing she'd made for my mother, everything inside me froze. My mother looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Sorry, sweetheart. None left for you." Then she turned, still smiling, and handed 3 extra passes to the neighbor's kids. While my daughter stood there watching it happen, I didn't scream. I didn't snap. I didn't even ask why. But something inside me cracked, quietly and dangerously. Because this time, my mother didn't just come after me. She went after my child. The morning had started so peacefully that it almost feels insulting when I look back on it now. I braided Lila's hair, tied her pale blue ribbon, and packed her tiny rainbow backpack, the one she always carried whenever she wanted to give someone a drawing. She'd worked all week on those pictures. One for every cousin. One special one for my mother. "Do you think Grandma will like it?" she asked as we drove through our neighborhood. "She will," I said. I was still naive enough to believe it. When we arrived at my mother's house, the backyard was already busy, kids shouting, adults setting out trays of food, the smell of grilled burgers drifting through the air. My sister, Hannah, offered a quick smile that didn't reach her eyes. My brother-in-law mumbled a hello without looking up from his phone. But Lila didn't notice the tension. She never did. She just wanted to belong. She ran toward her cousins with a shy little wave, holding out her drawings like they were treasure maps. "Look, I made these for you," she said. Some kids took them politely, others ignored her. But even small scraps of kindness were enough to make her beam. My mother stood nearby, rearranging cutlery as if she were hosting a wedding instead of a casual barbecue. I approached her with Lila's special drawing. "Mom," I said gently, "Lila made this for you." She took it between 2 fingers, barely glanced at it, and set it on the counter behind her without a single comment. Lila's smile flickered just for a second. She pressed her lips together, nodding to herself as if trying to stay brave. "It's okay, Mommy," she whispered. "Maybe Grandma's busy." Busy. That's what Lila always said whenever someone dismissed her. Busy was her way of forgiving the unforgivable. But I felt something in my stomach twist. My mother had always been strategic. Her affection was a currency she spent only when it benefited her. And ever since my divorce, ever since I stopped having money to contribute to her lavish family plans, she made sure I felt the consequences. But until that moment, I still believed she would never drag Lila into it. Then she clapped her hands together, loud enough to make every kid freeze. "Everyone line up. I have a huge surprise for all the grandkids." The children squealed. Lila bounced in place, eyes glowing. I watched from a distance, a knot tightening in my chest. Maybe this time would be different, I told myself. Maybe today, my mother would remember she was a grandmother. But deep down, I saw the tiny smirk on her face, and something inside me whispered that this day was about to go horribly, horribly wrong. My mother stepped forward with a bright, rehearsed smile, the kind she used when she wanted an audience. In her hands was a neat stack of blue envelopes, the Adventure Harbor logo shining like a prize. "Every grandchild gets one," she announced, holding them up like trophies. The kids screamed with excitement. Lila clutched my arm, practically vibrating with joy. My mother called each child's name with theatrical flair. "Evan, Chloe, Madison, Luke, and Jenna." Each kid ran forward, accepted their envelope, posed for a photo, then sprinted off cheering. It was loud, chaotic, full of laughter, everything childhood was supposed to be, except Lila was still waiting. She shuffled closer, smiling nervously, her little rainbow backpack bouncing at her side. She kept checking the drawing she'd made for my mother, making sure it wasn't bent. Then my mother reached the bottom of the stack, stopped, looked directly at Lila, and paused. The yard quieted just enough for me to hear the wrongness in the air. Finally, my mother said, lightly, "Oh, looks like we're out." Lila blinked. Her smile faltered. I stepped forward. "What do you mean, out?" "Mom, there were more envelopes." My mother cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Stella, please. It's not a big deal. She's young, she'll forget." I felt the heat rising in my face. Mom, every grandchild was supposed to. But before I could finish, she turned her back on my daughter, and walked toward the three neighbors' boys sitting on folding chairs near the fence. Here you go, boys, she chirped sweetly, handing each of them a bright blue envelope. Enjoy your summer. The boys tore the envelopes open, shouting in excitement. Lila stood completely still. I don't think she even breathed. Her fingers curled around the drawing she'd made so tightly the paper crumpled. My mother looked over her shoulder at me with a smug little smirk. Really, Stella, she said. Don't make a scene. A scene? A scene? My daughter, my shy, gentle daughter, had just been publicly excluded by her own grandmother. Not accidentally, not carelessly, deliberately. I knelt beside Lila. Sweetheart, look at me, I whispered. Her eyes were wide and shiny, holding back tears she didn't want anyone to see. It's okay, Mommy, she said in a trembling voice. I guess I didn't need one. That sentence, those 6 tiny words, hit me harder than anything my mother had ever said. I stood up and faced my mother. We're leaving, I said flatly. My mother laughed. Stella, don't be ridiculous. But for the first time in my life, her voice meant nothing to me. I took Lila's hand and walked her to the car as the other kids screamed and laughed behind us. And I swear, that walk felt longer than any road I had ever taken, because with every step, I realized something horrifying. My mother hadn't forgotten a pass. She hadn't miscounted. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a statement, a message, a warning, a punishment. And she delivered it straight into the heart of a 7-year-old child. My child. The moment the car doors shut, the world outside went silent. No laughter, no sizzling grill, no forced family cheer. Just the sound of my daughter's uneven breathing in the back seat. Lila stared out the window, her rainbow backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. She didn't cry. She didn't make a sound. She just disappeared into herself. Sweetheart? I said softly. Talk to me, please. Nothing. A full minute passed. Then, in a whisper so small it barely existed, she asked, Mommy, why didn't Grandma want me to have a pass? My throat closed. I couldn't answer. Not truthfully. She continued, her voice breaking. Did I do something wrong? I tried to be good. I gave her my picture. I waited in line. I tried really, really hard. I felt something inside my chest shatter. No, baby, I said, reaching back to touch her knee. You did everything right. Grandma made a bad choice. That's not your fault. But she smiled at the other kids, Lila whispered. And she didn't smile at me. Her small voice, so full of confusion and shame, hit me harder than any insult my mother had ever thrown at me. Childhood isn't supposed to feel like rejection. Not from family, not from someone who's supposed to love you without conditions. We don't have to go back there for a while, I said gently. Lila hesitated, then nodded. Okay, just one word. But it sounded like surrender. I hated how familiar that tone was, because I had spent most of my life surrendering to my mother too. The subtle digs, the jokes, the comparisons. The way she rewarded my siblings while reminding me always that I was the disappointment. But dragging a 7-year-old into her bitterness? A line had been crossed so violently I could still feel the sting of it. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. My mother hadn't just humiliated my daughter. She had done it publicly, purposefully, with a smile. And the more I replayed the moment, the more something cold and steady settled inside me. For years, I'd told myself things like, she didn't mean it like that. She's just stressed. That's just how she is. But Lila's voice in that car erased every excuse. When we pulled into our driveway, Lila unbuckled her seatbelt and whispered, Mommy, can we just stay home today? I don't want Grandma to see me. I swallowed back tears. Of course, baby. We're staying home. She nodded and went straight to her room. I stood in the hallway, staring at her closed door, my hands trembling. That was the moment I realized. If I didn't protect my daughter from my mother, nobody else would. Not even my own family. And as that truth sank in, another followed, sharper and more dangerous. My mother still believed she had control. Over me, over Lila, over the entire narrative. She had no idea that she'd just pushed me too far. She had no idea what I was capable of when it came to my daughter. But she was about to learn. After Lila went to bed early, too early for a child who should have been buzzing from a fun family day, I sat alone in the dim kitchen, staring at the clock as it ticked past 10 p.m. My house had never felt quieter. It wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that vibrates in your bones. The kind that comes right before a storm breaks. I opened my laptop. I didn't plan to. I didn't sit down with a scheme ready. But anger, real anger, doesn't shout. It whispers. It sharpens. It waits. I typed in the login information for my mother's renovation fund, the account she created last spring when she wanted to build her dream basement, the account I helped set up, the account she assumed I'd forgotten, the account she never removed me from. The page loaded. Balance: $9,247.83. $9,000. A summer's worth of Lila's medical bills. 4 months of my rent. A number my mother waved around without ever thinking how much it meant to someone like me. I stared at it for a long, long moment. Then Lila's trembling voice echoed in my mind. Why didn't Grandma want me to have one? My hand moved before I consciously decided. Transfer funds. All of it. Into my own account. Not because I wanted the money. Not because I planned to use it. But because my mother needed to understand what it felt like when something you believed was guaranteed suddenly wasn't. I sat back in my chair, breathing slowly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. At exactly 7:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Mom, Stella. Something is wrong with the renovation account. The balance is incorrect. Call me immediately. I poured cereal for Lila and ignored it. 10 minutes later, Mom, this isn't funny. We need that money. Then, Dad. Stell, sweetheart. Looks like the account glitched or something. Give us a call, okay? We've got contractors waiting. A glitch, of course. I packed Lila's lunch, tied her shoes, took her to school. I didn't answer a single message. I finally picked up. My mother didn't bother with greetings. Stella, give the money back. No, I said calmly, surprising even myself. Her breath hissed sharply through the phone. Don't play games with me. We have deadlines. We have workers scheduled. You can't just like you couldn't humiliate a child in front of her entire family? I cut in. A pause. Then she chuckled. A cold, dismissive sound. Oh, please. You're overreacting. Kids forget these things. Lila won't forget yesterday, I snapped. And neither will I. My mother's voice softened into that sticky sweet tone she used when she wanted control. Stella, honey, let's not turn this into something bigger than it is. Just return the funds. No, I repeated. You made your choice. This is mine. Her voice rose sharply. You're punishing us over a child's feelings? I laughed. Actually laughed. My daughter's feelings are worth more than your entire basement. Stella. I ended the call. Lila pushed her pasta around her plate. Mommy, is Grandma mad at us? No, baby, I said softly, tucking hair behind her ear. But even if she was, that isn't your fault. Not any of it. Lila hesitated, then whispered, Can we not go back there for a while? I don't like how my stomach feels when we're at Grandma's. My heart clenched. Of course, sweetheart. We're not going anywhere that makes you feel small. She nodded, relieved. As she curled up on the couch with her stuffed penguin, I watched her breathe deep, shaky, but safe. And I realized something with perfect, terrifying clarity. I had thrown the first punch. My mother would throw the next, but this time, I wasn't the daughter she could manipulate. Now, I was a mother, and I was done playing nice. It happened 2 days later. A Saturday morning so quiet it felt staged. Lila was outside on the sidewalk, crouched over her chalk drawings. Lopsided suns, crooked flowers, swirls of blue and pink. Her humming drifted softly through the open window. For the first time in days, she looked peaceful. Then a car screeched to a stop in front of my house. I froze. My mother's silver SUV, parked halfway on the curb, crooked and impatient. My stomach dropped. Before the engine even shut off, my mother stepped out, marching toward my daughter with a determination that made my skin crawl. My father followed behind her, slower, quieter, eyes down like he already knew this wouldn't end well. I rushed to the front door, flinging it open just in time to hear my mother kneel beside Lila and say, in a sickly, sweet voice, Hi, sweetheart. Do you remember the zoo trip we took last summer? You had so much fun. Lila's chalk stopped mid-stroke. She looked up at me, confused, like she didn't know whether she was supposed to answer or run. Lila, I called gently but firmly, come inside. She stood immediately. No hesitation. She dusted chalk off her hands and walked past both of them without a word. The way my mother's face faltered just for a split second told me everything. She expected Lila to come crawling back, to smile, to forgive, to validate her. Instead, Lila slipped through the doorway, and I closed the door behind her. Now it was just me and them. My mother stood up slowly, brushing imaginary dust off her pants. "We need to talk," she said. I crossed my arms. "Then talk." My father stepped forward first, rubbing the back of his neck. "Stell, we need the renovation money back. The windows are ordered. The contractor starts Monday." I cut him off. "Not my problem," my mother scoffed. "Not your problem? You're the one who stole it." I raised an eyebrow. "Stole? Or simply accessed an account you left my name on?" Her face reddened. "Don't get smart with me, Stella. You know exactly what you did." "Yes," I said. "I protected my daughter." "Oh, stop." She waved a hand. "You're blowing a tiny misunderstanding out of proportion." "A misunderstanding?" My voice sharpened. "You humiliated a child, publicly, on purpose." My mother's lips thinned. "You don't know what you're talking about. The passes were miscounted. Anyone could have made that mistake." I stepped closer. "Then why did you hand the extra passes to the neighbor's kids?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes flicked away. My father tried to intervene. "Stella, listen. It wasn't personal. We were frustrated about the cruise last year. Things got—" "Hold on." I stared at him. "You're saying Lila was punished because I didn't pay for your luxury vacation?" He had no answer. My mother's voice rose again, sharp and cold. "You're being vindictive, Stella. This is childish. You're teaching Lila to hold grudges." "No." I shook my head. "I'm teaching her boundaries. Something you never taught me." My mother stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You give that money back, or what?" I asked quietly. "You'll punish Lila again?" Her breath caught. For a moment, guilt flickered in her eyes. Then she shoved it down. "We are your parents," she snapped. "You don't get to treat us this way." "And Lila is my child," I replied. "And you don't get to treat her the way you did." My mother's jaw tightened. My father whispered, almost pleading, "Stella, please. We're just asking you to be reasonable." I stared at them both. "You want reasonable?" I said. "Here it is. Go home. Think about why Lila won't even look at you. Think about what you did to her. Then maybe we can talk." My mother threw her hands up. "This is ridiculous. You can't hold the entire family hostage over a theme park pass." I opened the door to end the conversation. "It wasn't about the pass," I said quietly. "It was about the moment you decided my daughter didn't belong." For the first time, my mother's expression broke. Not into guilt, but into something uglier. A tight, irritated sneer. "Maybe she just doesn't fit in with the rest of the kids," she muttered. I froze. My heart stopped. Behind me, on the staircase, Lila's small voice said, "Mommy?" My mother's eyes widened. She hadn't realized Lila was listening. I did not shout. I did not cry. I simply said, "Get off my property." My parents left without another word. And as I closed the door, Lila slipped her hand into mine, a quiet tremble in her fingers. That was the moment I knew. This war wasn't about money anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from the people who should have loved her most. And my mother had just crossed a line she could never uncross. That night, after the confrontation, the house felt tense, like the air itself was waiting for something to snap. I tucked Lila into bed early. She clung to my shirt for a moment before whispering, "Mommy, what did Grandma mean? About me not fitting in?" My heart twisted. I smoothed her hair and whispered, "She was wrong, baby. And she said something she should never have said. But she meant it." Lila whispered, eyes lowering. "She didn't want me there." I felt the rage rise slow and controlled, like a tide. "No," I said firmly. "Grandma is wrong. And what she did says nothing about you. It says everything about her." Lila nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She curled into herself, holding her stuffed penguin tight, and for the first time, she fell asleep facing the wall. It was 11:47 p.m. I almost didn't listen, but something inside me said I needed to hear it. My father's voice filled the room, calm but sharpened in a way I'd never heard before. "Stella, this has gone far enough." A long sigh. "You forced our hand. Your mother and I tried to apologize. They hadn't. It But if you insist on blowing a misunderstanding out of proportion, maybe this distance is for the best. I felt my jaw tighten. Then came the part that shattered something inside me. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe Lila just doesn't fit into this family anymore. I replayed it twice. Not because I didn't understand the words, but because I couldn't believe they had actually said them. They were willing to erase my child, to cut her out, to discard her like she was an inconvenience. Not because of who she was, but because she was mine. I stared at the wall as the voicemail ended, fists trembling, vision blurring at the edges. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't pettiness. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was cruelty. Cold, calculated cruelty. An attack on the one person in the world I would burn everything to protect. I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling fade from black to gray, thinking about every insult my mother had ever disguised as a joke. Every time she'd made me feel small. Every time I swallowed the hurt to keep the peace. And I thought about Lila, my sweet, gentle daughter, whose only mistake was loving people who didn't deserve her. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I hadn't used in years. Uncle Ray. He wasn't technically my uncle, he married into the family decades ago, but he was the only adult who ever treated me like a human being instead of a disappointment. More importantly, he ran the family business. A business my parents depended on. A business they bragged about like it belonged to them. I stared at his name for a long moment. Then I pressed call. He answered on the first ring. Stella? His voice was gentle. It's been a while. Yeah, I breathed. I need help. Tell me everything, he said. And I did. No filters. No minimizing. No shame. I told him how my mother ignored Lila's drawings, how she staged the entire pass ceremony, how she gave extras to strangers, how she told my daughter she didn't fit, and how they'd left a voicemail essentially confirming it. The line went silent. Completely. Terrifyingly silent. Then Uncle Ray spoke quietly, but with an edge I had never heard from him before. Stella, are you done trying to make peace with them? I exhaled shakily. Yes, I'm done. There was another pause. Then, all right, he said. They're out. My breath caught. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, they won't get another contract. Not through the family company. Not through anyone we work with. They built their reputation on our name, but that ends today. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Uncle Ray. I didn't call to ruin them. No, he said. You called to protect your daughter, and you did. His voice softened. Let me handle the rest. Not with an explosion. Not with a screaming match. But with a single truth finally spoken. I was done letting my parents hurt my child. This wasn't about revenge. This was war. A war they started. A war they assumed I would walk away from. Because I always had before. But they hadn't counted on one thing. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was Lila's mother. And I would burn every bridge left standing. Before I let anyone, even family, make her feel unwanted again. 3 days passed before they showed up again. Not loudly. Not with the aggressive door pounding from before. This time, they parked across the street and just sat there, watching my house, watching my windows, watching for movement, predatory, calculated. Exactly like my mother. I saw their silhouettes through the blinds as I helped Lila with her spelling homework. She didn't notice, thank God, but my heart hammered in my chest. I knew what this was. Not reconciliation, not remorse, a strategy. And right on cue, the doorbell rang. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me, leaving Lila safely inside. My mother stood on the porch with a carefully crafted expression, eyes slightly red, lips pressed together, hands clasped in front of her like she'd practiced looking vulnerable in the car mirror. My father hovered behind her, arms folded, jaw clenched. We need to talk, my mother said softly. I don't think we do, I replied. But she pushed forward anyway. Your uncle cut us out completely, she snapped, dropping the fragile act almost instantly. Do you have any idea what you've done? We lost the Henderson roofing contract. The drywall team canceled. The electricians backed out this morning. I crossed my arms. Okay, and? She shrieked, stepping closer. Stella, that contract was worth tens of thousands of dollars. Lila is worth more, I said. My mother scoffed an ugly, sharp sound. Oh, please. This isn't about Lila. This is about you throwing a tantrum because you didn't get your way. I took a slow breath. So humiliating a 7-year-old was, what? A life lesson? A joke? A power move? My father broke in, voice rising. You're ruining our reputation over a theme park pass. I stared at him. Dad, that wasn't a mistake. Mom handed extra passes to 3 kids who weren't even related to us. How are you still pretending you don't see that? He didn't answer. He couldn't. My mother took a step forward, trying again to regain control. Stella, be reasonable. We've always tried with Lila, but… I froze. Tried? I repeated. Tried what exactly? She hesitated just long enough for the truth to slip out. You know, she's different. Sensitive. She doesn't really fit in with the rest of the kids. My stomach twisted violently. Say that again, I whispered. My mother's lips twitched. She didn't realize she'd crossed a line until it was already too late. She doesn't fit our family dynamic, Stella. Some children just don't. The door behind me clicked. Lila was standing there, half hidden behind the door frame, her stuffed penguin dangling from her hand. Her eyes not angry, not crying, just unbelievably sad, locked onto my mother. My mother finally noticed her. Her face drained of color. Lila, sweetheart. But Lila took a step back. That single movement said everything. I felt something inside me ignite. A fire that had been smoldering for years. Get away from my daughter, I said. Voice cold, steady, dangerous. My mother tried again. You're twisting my words. She wasn't supposed to hear that. But she did, I snapped. And she heard it because you meant it. No, Stella. She's 7, I said. She's a child. And you made her feel unwanted in her own family. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For once, she looked small. My father stepped forward, voice tight with anger. This is all your fault, Stella. Your uncle only cut us off because you filled his head with lies. I cut him off. No, he cut you off because you showed him exactly who you are. My mother shook her head frantically. We can fix this. Lila just needs to hear our side. No, I said sharply. You don't get to talk to her. But you don't get to explain, justify, spin, manipulate, or rewrite what you did. Not this time. My mother's face twisted with desperation. We're your parents. And she, I interrupted, pointing to the trembling little girl behind me, is my daughter, and I will burn every bridge left standing before I ever let you hurt her again. For once, my parents stood speechless, truly speechless, not angry, not defensive, just stunned, as if it had never occurred to them that the power they held over me my whole life could simply evaporate the moment I decided it was over. I stepped back and reached for the door. This conversation is done. My mother's voice cracked on a last attempt. Stella, don't do this. But I already was. I closed the door, locked it, and exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for 30 years. Lila's voice trembled. Mommy, am I really not part of the family? I knelt in front of her, took her face in my hands. No, baby, I whispered. You are my family, and that's enough. She threw her arms around my neck, holding me tighter than she ever had before. In that moment, I knew. My mother hadn't just lost access to a renovation fund. She hadn't just lost business contracts. She had lost something far more permanent, the right to be in our lives. And I wasn't done protecting my daughter. Not even close. After the confrontation on the porch, the world seemed eerily quiet. My phone didn't ring. No knocks on the door. No accidental drive-bys from my parents' SUV. Just silence. For the first time in my life, silence felt like freedom. Lila slept in my bed that night, curled against me with her stuffed penguin. She didn't ask about Grandma. She didn't cry. She simply rested, something she hadn't been able to do since the day everything fell apart. The next morning, she woke up and whispered, Mommy, can we make pancakes? And just like that, like sunlight breaking through a storm, we did. Flour everywhere. Batter dripping off the counter. Lila, laughing again. Her laughter sounded different now. More fragile. But real. And it was enough. Just wanted to let you know, he said. Your parents came to my office again this morning. They tried to argue. Tried to negotiate. Tried to make themselves sound like victims. I sighed. I'm sorry, Uncle Ray. I didn't mean to drag you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere, he replied firmly. They showed who they were. I just responded accordingly. What did they say? He hesitated a moment. They insisted they were being punished unfairly, that you were emotional, that Lila was too sensitive and took things the wrong way. My throat tightened. Then Uncle Ray's tone hardened in a way I rarely heard. I asked them one question, Stella. Can you honestly say you treated that child with love? I held my breath. They couldn't answer, he said quietly. They didn't say yes. They didn't say anything. And that told me everything. I closed my eyes, not in sadness, but in clarity. They won't be returning to the company, Uncle Ray continued. Not now, not ever. And if they try to go around me again, I'll shut that down too. Thank you, I whispered. No, he said. Thank you. For standing up for Lila when no one else would. Lila started drawing again bright, colorful pictures with smiling suns and tall flowers. One afternoon, she taped a new drawing to the fridge. A small house. 3 stick figures, me, her, and her penguin, and 1 tall stick figure labeled, Uncle Ray, he helps us. I laughed and cried at the same time. A week later, while we were making dinner, Lila asked, Mommy, are Grandma and Grandpa still mad? I dried my hands and knelt in front of her. I don't know, I said honestly. And it doesn't matter. She nodded slowly, thinking, processing, then whispered, I don't want to go back there. I don't like how they make me feel. I kissed her forehead. You don't have to go back, I said. Not ever, if you don't want to. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled. A real smile the kind children should always have. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need my parents to apologize. I didn't even need them to understand the damage they caused. All I needed was this: my daughter safe, happy, and whole. They lost the contracts. They lost the business connections they depended on. They lost their reputation as the pillar couple of the community. But most of all, they lost access to my daughter. And that, far more than the money, is what truly destroyed them. Because they wanted control. They wanted obedience. They wanted power. But instead, they handed me every reason to walk away. And I finally did. One evening, as I tucked Lila into bed, she looked up at me and said, Mommy, I'm glad it's just us. Tears stung my eyes. Me too, baby, I whispered. Me too. And for the first time, I truly believed it.